Welcome back to Keepin' the Comic. I'm GoofyRhexxi. With the X-Men 97 series coming to Disney Plus, I thought it would be fun to give you a recap on the 5 seasons of the original X-Men animated series in about 10 minutes or so. You're welcome. No, but in all honesty, the original series was a total of 76 episodes spanning from 1992 all the way to 1997. Not everyone has watched all the episodes, or maybe there were some things that you potentially forgot. So we're going to be going through all the important aspects of each season to give you enough context for the upcoming X-Men 97 series. Now, starting off with season 1, these 13 episodes were serialized and had an overarching story, something that the show's producers fought very hard for. It opens with Sabretooth beating the crap out of regular humans because mutants are mostly despised by them, which naturally produces a lot of hate between the group. Now, Jubilee's foster parents decide to hand her over to the Mutant Registration Agency, which Jubilee is pissed off about. Her house is attacked by a Sentinel who tracks her to a mall and grabs her, but she's saved by the X-Men, specifically Storm, Rogue, Gambit, and Scott. Jubilee gets introduced to the rest of the X-Men, only to then be captured by the Sentinels and then gets rescued by the X-Men again. But this moment is pretty significant because Morph dies, or so we think. Beast is captured and Jubilee decides to join the Xavier Academy. Now, Magneto surfaces in the next episode and tries to free Beast, but Beast remains hell-bent on staying captured. Magneto is a mutant freedom fighter who wants to get rid of humans and establish a world ruled by mutants. Sabretooth ends up going into a rage to free Beast and he gets injured by the guards, but luckily he gets rescued by Cyclops, who takes him back to the Xavier mansion. This does not sit well with Wolverine because he and Sabretooth, let's just say that they have quite the history. Now, Xavier tries to break into Sabretooth's mind to quell his rage, but it doesn't work. Meanwhile, Magneto sets a chemical plant on fire. The team goes to stop him, but he escapes. Meanwhile, Sabretooth tries to wreck the mansion, but then gets stopped by Wolverine, and he escapes as the rest of the team returns home. We get to see Jean and Cyclops getting captured by an underground race called the Morlocks, and the rest of the team has to battle the Morlocks to free them, with Storm facing off against their leader, Callisto. This eventually takes us to Slave Island in episode 7, where the members of the X-Men and other mutants are forced to work as slaves to power a Sentinel factory until Gambit manages to escape with the help of Cable and rescues all the other mutants. Also, their mansion gets trashed by Juggernaut. And this little Dr. Alder tries to find a cure for mutant abilities, but it's revealed that he is Mystique working for Apocalypse, who lures mutants looking for the cure to his island, and then he turns them into his horsemen. Then they attack the War and Peace Conference. They get confronted by the X-Men, forcing Apocalypse to escape. Then the Days of Future Past storyline come around, and a mutant called Bishop comes back in time to stop an anti-mutant senator from getting killed. And it turns out Mystique was going to frame Gambit and the X-Men by killing the senator, but they stop her. Master Mode shows up and tries to replace the senator's brain, but Wolverine and Magneto team up and beat a whole lot of Sentinels and save the senator, who decides to call off his campaign against mutants, and Beast is finally freed. Now, season 2 gets a little interesting here as Magneto and Professor X get lost in the Savage Lands, and the team has to get by on his absence. Scott and Jean get married, much to the chagrin of Wolverine. Mr. Sinister clones Morph, yep, he's still alive, and uses him to give the X-Men trouble, like getting Jubilee to join the Friends of Humanity, which is a mutant hate group. Then Mr. Sinister kidnaps Cyclops and Jean on their honeymoon, but they get saved by the X-Men, who uncover Morph's schemes. We get a series of episodes focused on singular characters like Storm going back to Africa to face the Shadow King, and Colossus needing the help of the team to face the villainous Omega Red from the Soviet Union. I love Omega Red. Gambit is forced to marry his ex Belladonna, but he gets rescued by the team. Wolverine gets captured by the Vindicator and the Alpha Flight team, but he is noticed by Jean through Cerebro, and that's how he gets saved. Cable and Bishop show up in the next episode with some time-traveling mayhem, and they fight to save their respective futures due to Apocalypse releasing a virus. But thankfully, they resolve their differences by using Wolverine's blood to cure the virus. Also, it turns out Rogue absorbed Miss Marvel's powers, including her consciousness, which puts her into a coma, and Rogue has to deal with that with the help of Jean Grey. An anti-mutant group attacks Beast in the hospital, where he works after he's falling for a girl called Carly, who gets kidnapped by the group, but Beast and Wolverine manage to save her. Also, the alien Mojo turns most of the team into a reality show for some reason, but they get free by Mojo's assistant Spiral. Now, Charles and Magneto are still in the Savage Lands facing all sorts of danger, and they encounter this dude called Saren, who is a conqueror of the Savage Land. The team eventually meets them in the Savage Land, only to get captured by Mr. Sinister, who renders all of them powerless. But Wolverine manages to escape, and he teams up with Kazar and then frees the team, and they engage Mr. Sinister in an epic battle. Now, I did say season 2 was really interesting, but season 3 gets a little bit more interesting-er. We get introduced to an alien race called the Shi'ar race, which marks the beginning of the Phoenix Saga. This season starts with a 2-part episode where Wolverine, Gambit, and Jubilee run into Yuriko, aka Lady Deathstrike, who is Wolverine's ex-lover from his time in Japan. She lures him underground to a ship where they find a gaseous entity known as the Spirit Drinker, which Professor X has been getting warnings about. Now, the Spirit Drinker can absorb the spirit of people, and he does so to Jubilee, the Morlocks, and others. So Gambit and Wolverine and all the other X-Men have to work together to stop him. This leads to the Phoenix Saga, where Jean is taken over by the Phoenix Force in an astronaut mission and gets a really cool-ass costume and makeover. Xavier tries to help her, and he ends up forming a dark Professor X that torments the entire group. Professor X starts getting visions from a Shi'ar royal called Lilandra, who is a hostage of Juggernaut and Black Tom Cassidy. Turns out Lilandra came to Earth to protect something called the Macron Crystal from her brother Dicken, which now that I said it out loud kind of rhymes with dickhead, and that's basically what he is in this damn story. Now, Jean fully embraces the Phoenix Force and uses its power to save the X-Men from the Gladiator, Dicken's right-hand man. Jean takes them to Lilandra's ship, but they suddenly meet a group of space pirates called the Starjammers, who steal the crystal as a part of their plan to assassinate Dicken, which goes wrong. Now, Dicken gets his hands on the crystal, merges with it, and then starts sucking the universe and people into the crystal. Yep, don't even try to understand it. And that's just the first 5 episodes of the Phoenix Saga, but more on that in a second. Speaking of 5, if you could high-five that like and that subscribe button, I know it probably doesn't make any sense, but do it anyways, we'd really appreciate it. But let's get back to the recap. So we also get some standalone episodes like the one with Cyclops going back to his roots. There's also an episode of Iceman trying to find his wife, Lorna Dane. Apocalypse comes back once more in an epic battle where he dropped the immortal lines, "I am the rocks of the eternal shores, crash against me and be broken." Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, when I heard those lines, I was like, this is a bad man. But let's move on. Now, this is kind of weird because Beast falls in love with the AI Apocalypse ship. I just don't get it. They managed to trap Apocalypse, but Archangel stupidly lets him out and the ship self-destructs. We also meet Longshot, who bonds with Jubilee and helps the team fight against Mojo Man. Even Saren makes a comeback and kidnaps Storm to the Savage Land. Then we get the next 5 episodes of the saga, which were truly spectacular. We get a few cameos from the likes of Captain Britain, we get Doctor Strange, and even Spider-Man from his animated series. Still, the team battles Dicken, who would have obliterated them if not for Jean and the Phoenix's intervention. The Phoenix concocts a plan to fly to the center of the sun with the crystal to destroy it and defeat Dicken, which of course Cyclops is like, what the f? So Jean sends everyone back to regular Earth and she sacrifices herself. Thankfully, Jean's consciousness survives and she's back on Earth, but she's in a comatose state. Now in season 4, things calm down a little bit. We no longer get epic adventures with aliens from outer space. The first episode features Juggernaut trying to destroy the X-Men, but the dude becomes powerless because someone finds the gem of Sidorak, which is a source of Juggernaut's power. So Wolverine and Cyclops end up retrieving the gem, Charles restores his powers, and Juggernaut ends up sparing everyone as payment. Thank you, I guess? Omega Red returns in the next episode, teaming up with Storm and Wolverine in an unstable submarine. Red tries to destroy the US with nukes, but the team stops him and leaves him at the bottom of the ocean. Yikes. Magneto comes back in episodes 3 and 4 called Sanctuary. He builds a sanctuary on an asteroid for mutants only, but gets usurped and thrown into space by Fabian Cortez, who tries to frame the X-Men for the deed, but eventually Magneto returns and exacts his revenge. Shadow King returns and tries to invade Professor X's brain. Dude got demolished and imprisoned by Jean Grey and Charles. It's totally fine. In the next episode, Morph comes back and joins the team to battle against the Sentinels and Master Mold, who is just ahead of his time. He eventually is defeated, but Morph decides not to rejoin the team. Then Cyclops goes to a town run by bad mutants to look for an old friend. And we get this famous episode where Nightcrawler and Wolverine debate about religion, and this helps Wolverine rediscover his faith. We also find out that Mystique is Nightcrawler's mama. but that's more dug into in a later episode. Then we get the one man's word storyline where the mutant known as Trevor Fitzroy goes back in time to kill Charles Xavier as a favor for Master Mold, who is somehow alive and well. So Bishop arrives in a timeline where the cyberpunk version of the X-Men and the other mutants are actively fighting against humans, including the Avengers, due to the absence of Charles Xavier. Bishop and his team eventually go back and fix things, but it takes a couple of tries if I'm being honest. Now, this story doesn't just have mutant discrimination, it also has racial discrimination, which I think was a pretty damn nice touch by them. The next one involves the mutant Proteus trying to connect with his estranged father, who is a jerk, so he ends up fighting the X-Men and then gets mentally imprisoned by Professor X, but he still connects with his dad, so it's a win-win. Some mutants then get captured by the High Evolutionary, including Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, and they find out that Magneto is their father. In another episode, Wolverine goes to Japan and fights the samurai. In another episode, we dig into Wolverine's past in the Weapon X program. Then there's a Christmas episode with the Morlocks, and there's some blood transfusion. And then finally, we end the season with 4 more episodes called Beyond Good and Evil, with none other than Apocalypse being the main villain. Only this time, he's messing with time, so Cable and all the other X-Men have to fight him across time. It was actually kind of dope. Now, unfortunately, season 5 is where the show kind of fell off hard. It just seemed like the show no longer had a proper budget, but the crew was still adamant on giving us a final season. First, we have the Phalanx Covenant storyline adaptation. The Phalanx, I'm probably saying that wrong, are a bunch of mutant-hating humans who transform themselves into technologically powered individuals. So Beast allies with Warlock, Magneto, Forge, and other questionable individuals to face them. In the next episode, Storm also marries the alien Archon on another planet, but she gets saved by the team. Fabian Cortez returns and kidnaps Jubilee for Apocalypse, but his plans get foiled by Beast, and he ends up getting the raw end of the deal. Then there's Jubilee's fairy tale, where during a cave-in, Jubilee tells a bunch of kids medieval stories starring X-Men characters, and then the X-Men come to save the day. It was kind of like a repeated sort of thing that would happen over and over again. Then there's an Old Soldiers episode where Wolverine recollects fighting in the Second World War along with Captain America and the Howling Commandos. Then Rogue helps a young mutant learn about the real world and hidden agendas. Then we watch the origin story of Mr. Sinister and how he accidentally created Xavier and Dr. Nathaniel Essex, which is a very interesting episode. And then we come to the final episode where we show Xavier getting crippled by Henry Peter Gurich, but leaves with Lilandra in the Shi'ar homeworld to get a cure. So the rest of the team, including Magneto, who was just about to take over the world, head to the mansion to say goodbye to Xavier. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where the show ended. The X-Men animated series is definitely quite the show. With so many fascinating stories and interesting characters, it was truly peak fiction, at least until season 5. So I cannot wait to see what the MCU does with this series here. Hopefully they stick to what fans really loved about the first 4 seasons and give us these epic adventures, these phenomenal stories that really dive into these characters. It's gonna be kind of difficult though with only 10 episodes, but we'll have to wait and see what they do. Now, part of what made this X-Men series what it was is really the big 3 in Cyclops, Wolverine, and Storm here. Check out this next video where we talk about who should be the next big 3 in the MCU. Like and subscribe for more here on the channel. Check out the links down below in the description. And until next time, and as always, guys, thanks so much for kicking it with Keepin the Comic.